I sat across from him, the door clicking shut behind me. The air in the room felt heavy, like it knew what was coming before I did. David Mercer, the man I'd trusted for 6 years, didn't even look up from his papers. He just slid a sheet across the table toward me, his voice cold and rehearsed. "You're being terminated for breach of confidential information." For a second, I thought I'd misheard. Breach of what? All I'd ever done was protect this company, even from itself. I opened my mouth to protest, but he cut me off with a raised hand. "The decision is final. Your access has already been revoked. Security will escort you out." It didn't matter that I had devoted nights and weekends, cleaning up the messes others had left behind. It didn't matter that I had uncovered fraud that could sink the whole company. In that moment, I realized the truth didn't matter here. Only survival did, and David Mercer had decided he would survive, at my expense. It wasn't supposed to be this way. I wasn't the kind of guy who made enemies. My name's Jason Keller, 35 years old, senior accounting supervisor at Mercer Financial. I wasn't flashy or political. I believed in numbers, in rules, in doing the right thing, even when nobody was watching. For 6 years, I kept my head down, worked late, and fixed mistakes that weren't even mine. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest. All I wanted was to balance the books, to do my job, to stay invisible. That Tuesday afternoon had started like any other. Coffee in one hand, spreadsheets glowing under fluorescent lights, until a discrepancy caught my eye. A payment that didn't match any invoice I had filed. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Maybe someone fat-fingered a number, or the system glitched again like it had last quarter. I flagged it, corrected the entry, and moved on. But 20 minutes later, I found another one, and then another. Smaller amounts this time, scattered across different departments. Each transaction just small enough to slip under the radar, if you weren't looking. Closely, I felt a knot tightening in my stomach. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was just sloppy bookkeeping. Still, something about it didn't sit right. So I stayed late that night long after everyone else had gone home. The hum of the HVAC system was the only sound as I dug deeper into the database. I cross-referenced vendors, matched payments against contracts, ran audit trails. What I found made my blood run cold. There were entire companies, vendors we had allegedly paid thousands to, that didn't exist. Fake names, fake addresses. Money wired to accounts that led nowhere real. The deeper I dug, the worse it got. It wasn't just sloppiness, it was fraud, and it wasn't small time either. We were talking hundreds of thousands, maybe millions, siphoned out over years. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the screen as the weight of it hit me. This wasn't something I could just fix with a journal entry or a quiet correction. This was criminal. The easy thing would have been to shut my laptop, pretend I hadn't seen it, and move on. Plenty of people in this industry had probably made that choice. But I couldn't. Not because I was brave. Not because I wanted to be a whistleblower. Because if I didn't say something, I was complicit. And I'd worked too hard to build my life. On honesty to watch it crumble now. I spent the next 2 days compiling everything. Screenshots, transaction logs, copies of vendor registrations. A paper trail so thick it could bury a man. On Friday morning, with my heart pounding in my ears, I requested a private meeting with my boss, David Mercer. I didn't know it yet, but that meeting would change everything. Not just for him, but for me too. Forever. I didn't sleep the night before the meeting. Every scenario ran through my head. Maybe David would thank me. Maybe he'd explain the discrepancy somehow. Maybe, just maybe, it was all a misunderstanding. By the time I knocked on his office door, I was running more on adrenaline than hope. "Come in," he said, not looking up from his screen. I stepped inside, clutching the thick file of evidence in my hand. My heart pounded against my ribs like it was trying to escape. He gestured for me to sit. A casual wave, like we were just going. To chat about quarterly reports. I placed the file on his desk and slid it toward him. "I found something," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Something serious." "Fraud, David. There are fake vendors. Stolen funds. It's all in there." For a moment he didn't move, didn't speak. Then, slowly, he closed his laptop, folded his hands, and smiled. Not a warm smile. Not even a polite one. A shark's smile. "That's a big accusation, Jason," he said, voice smooth as oil. "Are you sure you want to stand behind it?" I nodded. "I'm not accusing. I'm reporting. I'm following protocol." David leaned back in his chair, studying me like a bug under a microscope. "You've always been a hard worker," he said. "Loyal, thorough. I've always admired that about you." It sounded like a compliment, but it wasn't. There was a weight behind his words. Something cold. Something heavy. "Be careful," he added, his tone dropping just slightly. "When you dig too deep, you sometimes find things better left buried." I met his gaze, refusing to flinch. "I'm just doing my job," I said. He smiled again. Wider this time, teeth flashing. "Of course you are," he said. The meeting ended without another word. No acknowledgement of the evidence. No commitment to investigate. Nothing. As I left his office, a sinking feeling twisted in my gut. Like stepping off a curb and realizing, too, late, there's no ground beneath you. Something was wrong. Terribly wrong. I thought I was doing the right thing. But, in that moment, it became clear. David Mercer wasn't going to fix anything. He was going to fix me. I just didn't know how. Not yet, but I was about to find out. It didn't take long. 3 days after that meeting, I was summoned back to David's office. No warning. No agenda. Just a clipped email. "Come to my office, now." When I arrived, HR was already there. 2 people I barely knew, sitting stiffly in the corner like furniture nobody wanted to acknowledge. David didn't smile this time. He didn't pretend. There was a sheet of paper on the desk in front of him. He tapped it with one finger, slow and deliberate. "Jason, we have evidence that you violated company confidentiality," he said, voice heavy with fake disappointment. "Effective immediately, your employment is terminated." I stared at him, my mind spinning. What evidence? What confidentiality breach? David shrugged, the picture of regret. "We take these matters very seriously. There's no room for discussion." I looked to HR, searching for some shred of sanity, but they avoided my eyes. The trap had already been sprung. There was no getting out. "You'll be escorted to your desk to collect your personal belongings," David continued, already turning back. To his laptop. Dismissed. Erased. Security was waiting outside the door. The walk to my desk felt longer than it ever had before. Every step echoed in my ears, each footfall heavy with humiliation. It was like walking through a funeral procession. Only the funeral was my own. Every glance from coworkers felt like a knife between my ribs. Some looked away quickly, pretending not to see. Others watched openly, their faces a mixture of pity, confusion, and thinly veiled fear. No one spoke. No one dared. The hallway felt colder than usual, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead like a swarm of angry insects. The air smelled sterile, sharp, and dry, like it always did when something important was dying. I wasn't a valued employee anymore. I was a liability, a scandal. I packed what I could into a cardboard box, a few framed photos, a coffee mug, a couple of notebooks. My computer screen was already locked, my files wiped clean. They didn't even give me a chance to say goodbye. The security guard walked me out. I caught my reflection in the glass doors. I didn't see an accountant. I didn't see a whistleblower. I saw a man who had trusted the wrong people. a man who thought doing the right thing would protect him. Instead, it had painted a target on his back. Outside, the February wind cut through my coat like knives. I stood on the sidewalk, cardboard box in hand, staring up at the cold gray building that had once been my second home. David Mercer thought he had won. He thought he could fire me, smear my name, and bury the truth. But what he didn't know, what he hadn't counted on, was that I wasn't leaving empty-handed, and I wasn't done yet. Not by a long shot. I spent the weekend sitting in my apartment, staring at the box of junk from my desk, photos, old notebooks, a coffee mug that still smelled faintly of burnt office coffee. It wasn't much, but it wasn't nothing either. Buried between those papers, tucked inside an old finance journal, was a USB drive, a backup, a habit I'd picked up after too many late nights fixing other people's mistakes. On that drive were copies of everything I had uncovered, every fake invoice, every shady transaction, every piece of the puzzle David Mercer thought he had erased. I plugged it into my laptop and stared at the files as they loaded. Proof. Cold, hard proof. Not just. Enough to get my job back, enough to destroy him, but proof alone wasn't enough. I needed help, the kind that knew how to turn evidence into action, and I knew exactly where to start. On Monday morning, while most people were heading back to the office, I walked into the downtown offices of Kane & Turner LLP, one of the sharpest, most ruthless whistleblower law firms in the city. The lobby smelled faintly of leather and fresh coffee. The floors gleamed under my boots, each step echoing my nerves. The receptionist barely blinked when I said why I was there. Maybe she saw guys like me every week, exhausted, betrayed, desperate for someone to believe them. They assigned me. Ich, a lawyer, Sarah Nguyen, a woman with kind eyes and a voice sharp enough to cut glass. Her office was clean but not cold. A few law books, a plant on the windowsill, a framed quote behind her desk that read, "Justice is truth in action." I laid it all out, the fraud, the fake vendors, the firing, the setup. Sarah listened without interrupting, her pen scratching across a yellow legal pad. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair, steepling her fingers in front of her lips. "Did you make copies?" she asked. I nodded, sliding the USB drive across the desk. She plugged it in without hesitation, scanning a few files, her eyes sharpening as she read. "You have a case," she said finally. "A strong one. But we need to be smart, quiet, precise." She explained the process: file a confidential report with the CRA, Canada Revenue Agency. Alert the RCMP's Financial Crimes Division. Protect myself under whistleblower protection laws. It wouldn't be fast, it wouldn't be easy, but it would. Be real. And if everything went the way Sarah thought it would, David Mercer wouldn't just lose his company. He'd lose his freedom. By the end of that week, the first reports were filed. Anonymous, detailed, irrefutable. And then I waited, not like before, anxious, hoping for mercy. This time, I waited like a man loading a gun, knowing that when the shot finally came, it would hit exactly where it needed to. It started with a simple audit. At least that's what the company was told. 2 weeks after the reports were filed, a team from the CRA showed up, clipboard-toting, suit-wearing professionals who smiled politely and asked for access to routine financial records. David Mercer didn't flinch, at least not at. First, he welcomed them in, shook hands, cracked jokes about those pesky government types. He thought he could bluff his way through it. He thought it was just another inspection to sidestep. But this time it was different. They weren't just auditors. They were investigators, and they already knew exactly what they were looking for. The atmosphere in the office shifted almost immediately. Whispers traveled faster than emails. People huddled by water coolers speaking in hushed tones. Eyes darted nervously when a clipboard appeared. Files were double-checked, desks hastily organized, emails deleted. The smell of burnt coffee hung heavy in the break room, mixing with something sharper, fear. Nobody said it aloud, but everyone knew. Something big was happening. Something bad. Meanwhile, David kept up appearances. He strolled through the halls, shaking hands, smiling like a man who had nothing to hide. But every step, every forced joke, every good morning was a little too loud, a little too eager, like a man whistling in the dark, hoping the monsters wouldn't hear him. Behind the scenes, the RCMP's Financial Crimes Division had launched a full-scale investigation. They followed the money trails, cross-checked vendor registrations, interviewed former contractors, quietly, methodically. Piece by piece, the noose tightened. Meanwhile, I kept my distance. I didn't step foot near the company again, didn't talk to anyone who still worked there, didn't post anything online. From the outside, it probably looked like I had disappeared. Good. The quieter I stayed, the louder the evidence spoke for itself. Sarah kept me updated in short, clipped calls. Never texts, never emails. "They're digging," she said once. "And they're finding more than we ever expected." Turns out David's fraud wasn't just a side hustle. It was an empire. Shell companies, fake invoices, money funneled into personal accounts overseas. Years of rot, hidden just beneath the surface. And now it was all unraveling. I imagined David sitting in his office watching the polite auditors comb through his records, still smiling, still thinking he could spin his way out of it. He didn't know, not yet, but his world was already burning, and I was just getting started. It happened on a Wednesday morning. The office was buzzing. People, shuffling papers, making coffee, complaining about meetings, just another day. Until the front doors swung open. 2 officers from the RCMP walked in, crisp uniforms slicing through the hum of routine. Behind them, 2 more agents in plain clothes, badges out, eyes sharp. Conversations died mid-sentence. Chairs creaked as people leaned out from cubicles, craning their necks to see. David Mercer was in the middle of a conference call when they reached his office. They didn't knock. They didn't ask politely. They opened the door, stepped inside, and read him his rights. In front of everyone. The entire floor froze. Phones dangling off desks, mouths hanging open. No one moved. David tried to smile, tried to protest, tried to pull out that slick charm that had saved him so many times before. "There must be some mistake," he said, his voice cracking slightly. "I'm the CEO. I demand to speak to my attorney." It didn't work. The agents were cold. Efficient. They cuffed him right there in his tailored suit, with his gold cufflinks still gleaming under the fluorescent lights. The metallic click of the handcuffs echoed down the corridor, sharp and final. As they led him out, David's eyes scanned the room, wild, desperate, searching for a friendly face, a lifeline. There was none. People he had belittled, overworked, and lied to for years now stared back at him, some in shock, some in satisfaction. No one spoke, not even when he shouted over his shoulder, "This is a mistake. I'm innocent. I built this company." No one corrected him. No one defended him. The silence was louder than any accusation. You could almost hear the collective exhale, the weight of years of fear and resentment lifting from the room all at once. He was already history. Wasn't there to see it. I didn't need to be. Sarah called me that afternoon. "It's done," she said simply. I didn't celebrate, didn't pop champagne, didn't dance around my apartment. I just sat there, staring out the window at the gray city skyline, feeling the weight lift off my chest one slow breath at a time. It wasn't just about revenge. It was about justice. About proving, to them, to myself, that doing the right thing still mattered, even when it cost you everything. Maybe especially then. Justice isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just doing what's right, even when nobody's watching. If you found this story powerful, hit that like button, drop a comment, and subscribe for more real stories of quiet revenge and resilience. Thanks for being here. See you in the next chapter.